Welcome back to the CryptoWorld channel, everyone. My name is Josh, and today the stock market is pulling back after the official release of the CPI data from last month, which came in slightly higher than expected, but still lower than last month. This will be important to pay attention to, so I'll be talking more about that in just a moment. Definitely stick around. First of all, giving you a quick update on the daily Bitcoin chart, and even though today has been a crazy day in the crypto world with what has been happening with Luna and UST, and of course I've been providing regular updates on that situation over on my Twitter, which by the way you can find a link to my Twitter in the description down below and also in the pinned comment. But despite seeing that absolute brutal crash in the price of Luna, the Bitcoin price on the other hand has held up relatively well, because at the time of recording this video we're still finding some support at around 29 to 30,000 in that price range that I've been talking about for a while now on the channel. And obviously that was the price range where we found a lot of support back in the middle of last year and also early last year during that January correction. And in case you've missed my recent Bitcoin update videos, what I've been saying over the past few days is the fact that I do expect a bit of short-term support around this sort of price range, where we might end up seeing a few days worth of support around 29 to 30,000. But if the stock market keeps dumping, then that would simply continue to apply more selling pressure for crypto and Bitcoin, which means the Bitcoin price might end up breaking that line of support if the stock market keeps dumping, so keep that in mind. But for the time being, of course, that is the range of support to pay attention to. And also, while we're here on the daily Bitcoin chart, we have the daily Bitcoin RSI currently oversold, and the last few times where we've seen this happen, we usually see a bit of a short-term bounce, but I'm not necessarily expecting a lot of bullish price action or a full bullish reversal or anything like that just from this one signal, because when you zoom out to the 3-day Bitcoin chart, technically speaking, we still have this active bear flag in play, and the technical price target for this bear flag is coming in at around $25,000 per Bitcoin. And obviously, if the Bitcoin price confirms a break below around 29,000, then that would significantly increase the probability of the Bitcoin price reaching this price target at 25,000. And as I've been mentioning quite a lot recently on the channel, this price target at 25,000 falls right in between these two important moving averages. The green line is the 1,000-day simple moving average, and the red line is the 200-week simple moving average. And when you're zooming out on the larger timeframes like this weekly Bitcoin chart, you can see that historically speaking, during these massive either bear markets or just massive crashes in the Bitcoin price, we usually see a macro bottom, so basically a generational buying opportunity occur in between these moving averages. And right now, these two moving averages are coming in between 28,000 and 22,000, with that technical price target for the bear flag coming right in between at 25,000. And if you're looking at the weekly Bitcoin RSI, technically this does show a little bit more room to the downside before we enter into oversold territories on the weekly time frame. And historically speaking, simply based on many years worth of Bitcoin's price history and the RSI's history, in the past when the weekly Bitcoin RSI has entered into oversold territories, first of all, that has only happened just 2 times throughout Bitcoin's entire price history. And if you're looking at those 2 time periods right there, that was basically at the end of the 2014 bear market and the end of the 2018 bear market. And that brought the Bitcoin price right in between these two moving averages, while the weekly Bitcoin RSI bottomed out at around those oversold territories. And once again, if you're looking at where we are right now, we're getting close to those levels, but we're not there just yet. But going back to the 3-day time frame and focusing on the RSI, we can see that yes, on the 3-day time frame, we are currently oversold. And normally in the past, this means that we're close to some sort of bottom in the Bitcoin price, but we're not necessarily at the exact bottom right now, as I discussed in yesterday's video, because staying on the 3-day Bitcoin chart, but zooming into that bottom that we saw at the end of the 2018 bear market, and what we could see right here is the moment the Bitcoin price saw that initial capitulation in November 2018, we saw the 3-day Bitcoin RSI enter into oversold territories right there and then, but we still actually had one more bounce and then one more dump after that before we finally bottomed out for the bear market. And if you notice here in the 3-day Bitcoin RSI, we actually formed a bullish divergence, of course higher lows in the RSI while the price action formed lower lows. So that would be a potential signal that I'll be paying attention to moving forward to potentially help determine a Bitcoin bottom, but we're not seeing that just yet in the 3-day Bitcoin RSI, even though we are currently oversold. And when you zoom all the way out to the monthly Bitcoin chart, what we can see in the monthly Bitcoin RSI is the fact that we are finally crossing into the lower half of the RSI, which is actually a very rare event. We have only ever seen this happen just 3 other times throughout Bitcoin's entire price history. The first time this happened was obviously at the end of that 2014 2014 bear market. The second time this happened was at the end of the 2018 bear market. And the third time this has ever happened was during that March 2020 crash, when the Bitcoin price crashed by more than 50% in one single day, as the stock market was also crashing during that time period. So what we are seeing right now marks the fourth ever time this has happened. And if you're looking at all of the other times this has happened, all three of those other times, they turned out to be amazing buying opportunities if you were holding for the longer term. But it is important to mention two things. First of all, that is not financial advice. I'm just telling you what has happened time and time again throughout many years worth of Bitcoin's history, and what is most likely to occur next. And what I'm saying is most likely to occur next is obviously not an immediate Bitcoin pump. That is not what this signal means, because this is a long-term Bitcoin signal. And so simply based on Bitcoin's entire price history, right now I'm currently slowly dollar cost averaging into Bitcoin, and I am holding that Bitcoin for the longer term, as in at least for the next few years. But I will only start going a lot more heavier into Bitcoin. I will increase my Bitcoin purchases if the Bitcoin price breaks into this price range that I've been talking about recently on the channel. Now talking about the April CPI data that has been released today, and of course that has updated the official inflation rate of the US dollar year over year, which is now sitting at 8.3% inflation year over year. And with this figure that we got today, there's actually some good news and bad news around this figure. The good news is of course the fact that inflation has potentially now peaked, because if you're looking at what we were seeing a month ago, that was an 8.5% inflation rate year over year. But right now, once again, we're sitting at an 8.3% inflation rate, which shows us inflation is potentially starting to cool off, and that is a good sign for markets. But the bad news is that we were expecting a little bit lower than what we're seeing at the moment. Once again, right now we're at 8.3, but we were expecting around 8.1 to 8.2. So with CPI coming in at 8.3%, that is slightly higher than expected, which is technically slightly more bearish than bullish. Basically, the higher the inflation, the more bearish that is, because if inflation is going higher and higher and just getting out of control, then the Fed has to be more strict with their monetary policy, and that would potentially result in higher interest rates, which is very bearish for markets. But in the coming months, if we see inflation start cooling off even more, then that would basically be a signal for the Fed to take the foot off the brakes, which could potentially result in either fewer or lower interest rate hikes. But it is still very much expected at this point that we're going to see more interest rate hikes at this point, because even though we might be potentially seeing inflation starting to cool off, it is still obviously above 8%, which is very bad. And so basically, the sooner we see CPI return back to normal, which is normally sitting at around 2 to 3%, then the sooner markets can start flipping much more bullish again. But this will likely take some time, so it's important to remain patient. But in the meantime, we're going to have some cheap prices, which is where we find amazing opportunities. And so it's basically because of the fact that CPI came in around 0.1 to 0.2% higher than what we were expecting. That is one of the main reasons why we're seeing a bit more of a pullback in the stock market today. But if you want to continue to make money in crypto, no matter if prices are going up, down, or sideways, then these videos popping up right here on your screen are definitely for you to watch. Because in both of these videos, I reveal how I continue to make money in crypto no matter what prices are doing. But anyway, that is it for this update. I really hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you all in the next video.